Morning. Welcome. We are already 59 members strong, participants strong in today's call. We're glad you're all here. If there's somebody that you see on our participant list that is not here yet, give them a shout and have them jump on there. Today we have for our trainer, Mr. Christian Sadler. He is here every Thursday morning for us with wonderful training, with insights on how to make our lives, how to make our business better. And, Christian is just one of those guys that he just goes around. You remember the story of Johnny Appleseed? Here was a guy that went through colonial America, and he made it a better place for those that came after, as he planted and I think he's mythology, or urban legend, whatever the term is. But at any rate, he prepared food and shade and building materials for people that came after him. He didn't benefit from the apple trees that he planted. And here's Christian Sadler. He is someone that goes along. He is benefiting from the things that he's doing, and he is benefiting the rest of us who follow in his tracks. He is someone who is thinking about others. He sits on the board of a nonprofit that improves the people's lives here in Utah. He is one of the co-founders of Team Elevate here in Salt Lake City, and he spends hours and hours a week so that our business will be better. Christian, we're so glad you're here this morning. How are you, sir?
I am great, and I'm so glad to be here, Ron. Am I coming through okay?
You sound fantastic.
Okay, perfect. Well, I want to thank you, Ron, for everything that you do for this team and your commitment to continue to serve and just make these calls great, as well as make our whole community great. You know, you always bring such a positive attitude and a smile on your face and a great energy with you. And it's infectious within our group. And I'm really grateful to have, Ron, you and so many people like you who are just simply focused on the greater good of everyone around them. And, it's really an honor to work side by side with you. So, folks, let's jump into this. I have an interesting topic that I want to talk to you today. The thing about it is I could cover it so quickly that I'm going to expand upon it. And I'm going to kind of leave the meat of what I wanted to share with you towards the end. Now, that doesn't mean that there's going to be fluff in the beginning by any means. I just want to kind of scale this from, let's call it beneficial to most beneficial. Let's call it that way, right? So where I've seen results versus where I've seen the most results. And what I'm talking about, if you didn't see the text, is incentives. Okay? How can you use incentives in your favor? So let me go ahead and share some whiteboard. And let's get into this. Let's talk about it. Let me get some better color going on here. All right, perfect. So today we are talking about incentives. So as we talk about incentives, there's lots of different types of incentives that we could utilize. And so the first thing that we're going to talk about actually is personal. Personal incentives. And let me just delete a couple of videos that we have on here. Oh, sorry, I don't want to remove you from the whole thing. I just want to get rid of your video. There we go. All right, so personal incentives. Oh, man, all right. So you guys got it. I'm going to trust you guys that you're going to turn off your videos so I don't have to keep going over there because it keeps popping up right where my hand goes, and that affects my ability to write. So personal incentives. Here's what I've realized is if you don't put in place some type of incentive for yourself in this business, you're not going to take the actions necessary, right? And so I actually had a trainer once that just recently I was talking to him, and he was He was kind of going through a scenario. And he said, if your boss came to you and they said, you know what? Hey, we've got this new position. Hold on a sec. Let me get rid of some videos. All right. If we have this new position for you, and here's what you're going to do. You're going to work extra hours. You're going to put in extra effort. You're going to make the company a tremendous amount more money. And here's the best part about it. With all this extra effort, all this extra work, all this extra energy, we are going to take the income from it and we're going to give it to your coworker. How many of you guys would sign up for that? How many of you guys would love your boss if they came to you and said, listen, you're going to put in extra hours, you're going to put in extra effort, you're going to go really the extra mile. And for all of your hard work, we're going to take that money and we're going to give it to your coworker. We're going to give it to somebody else. I'm sure that most of you would just be angry. You wouldn't like your boss very much, right? Well, here's the thing. When you have goals like paying off debt, like getting hold tight. All right, just checking the messages, make sure that's not you guys telling me that I'm not coming through. If you make goals like, oh, I can't wait to pay off my debt, if that's the whole reason that you're running your business and going the extra mile, guess what? The way that your mind perceives that is, I'm going to work all this extra time. I'm going to put in all this extra energy and I'm going to give it to someone else. And so even though consciously you might think that that's a great incentive, subconsciously your mind is saying you are absolutely crazy. You're crazy to think that I'm going to go ahead and put in all this extra effort and all this extra energy and all this extra work and all this extra commitment just so I can give that money away and not end up any further ahead than I am now. So I understand many times we're coming into this business, we're coming into it after being stuck in a broken cycle, in a broken system to where, you know what? We do need to pay off some debts. We need to do some of those things. But here's what I've found is from personal incentives, you've got to put something out there for yourself. You've got to incentivize that little person inside of you that's doing all the work, right? That's getting you up out of bed, that's pushing you to take the extra action, that's helping you move through your personal development. If there's no incentive on the other side, then you're just going to end up frustrated. Even if you do the work, you're going to end up frustrated. So, yes, you can have goals of, getting yourself into a better financial position and using leverage rather than debt and all of those things. But you got to give yourself some incentives that are fun. So, incentives, you're going to do it in a couple of different ways. You're going to set some goals, right? And every time you have a goal or a win, right? Here's the thing. I've seen some people that they set goals and they have some huge wins, but they don't quite meet their goal, and so they never celebrate. So your incentives need to be a way to celebrate. This can be simple things. It can be, you know what? I'm going to go four-wheeling, right? I'm going to spend some extra time with my loved one. I'm going to go for a hike out in the mountains. It can be simple things, right? Or it can be bigger things, right? With some of your goals, these incentives could be things like, I'm going to get that car that I wanted, right? I'm going to upgrade the house the way that I've wanted to upgrade it. I'm going to, whatever it is, you've got to have ways to celebrate. Okay? Because if you celebrate, this is the, this is where you move towards pleasure. Your human nature does only two things. It moves toward pleasure or away from pain. So if you are creating a way to celebrate even your little wins, you're more likely to take the extra action the next time, right? Because if all you do when you have a big win is put yourself right back into the same position, and you don't take any time to recognize your successes, your subconscious mind is just going to be frustrated with this business. It's just going to be frustrated with you as the boss, right? You got to find ways to celebrate. Okay, so that's personal incentives. Let me clear this off here. Now let's talk about incentives for your team. All right, so same thing. When we think about this, now we have a unique opportunity where we get to influence those people that are on our team, people that we've brought into this business with Renatus, and there's some incentives that we can put in place based on what they are doing. So I know that Michael just recently, he put forth some huge incentives and gave all of us the opportunity to participate with our team. So if you are locked in and loaded and you're focusing on making $100,000 in the last quarter of the year so that you can go to France, then talk to your 5-star and say, hey, are you participating in this? Now, if they're not, that's totally up to them, because again, for you and your team, you are an independent marketing affiliate. There's nothing that you have to do to incentivize your team. And what I've found is a lot of times these incentives, these team incentives, have proven less than effective than I originally thought. But I still want to talk about it because that's leading me towards the incentives that I've seen that have worked for me over and over again. And in fact, I just used one last night, and I'm going to share with you kind of that story of how that incentive worked, but we're not there yet. We're talking about your team. So what kind of incentives can you put in place for your team? Well, if they're already a part of your team, one thing you can do is contests. So a contest can look a couple of different ways. You can have one winner. You can have benchmarks. There's a few different ways you can do it. So you can have based on highest production. You can have contests based on butts and seats. Someone's off of mute, by the way. I can hear you saying wow, and I appreciate that. Hold on one second, folks. Let me go to participants who are off of mute. Mute. All right, muted. All right, you could do it off highest production. You could do it off butts and seats. You could do it off of benchmarks. Oops. So highest production, this is something like, hey, whoever makes, has the most money that hits their business center in the next 90 days or 30 days or 60 days or whatever it is that you're setting for yourself, I'm going to give you a computer. I'm going to give you an iPad. I'm going to take you on a trip. The list goes on and on and on, right? We could go through all kinds of different rewards that you could give. And you could base it off of, hey, listen, whoever makes the most money, gets this thing. Whoever gets the most butts and seats gets this thing. Whoever does, hits certain benchmarks gets these things. And I've seen a lot of these. I can give you some examples. For example, Mitch Nelson for a while there on his team, I know he was setting it to where he was giving away $1,000 a week. Oh, somebody came off mute again. Hold on a second, guys. All right. Please stay on mute. All right. So what he was doing, he was giving away $1,000 every single week to the people who would put the most butts in seats in his house tours. Now, there was some big reasons behind why Mitch was having some of these incentives in place. And a lot of it was he was proving a model, right? Here in Utah with our leadership team, results trump everything, right? Like if you have an idea of the way that you think that the team should be ran, or the event should be ran, or things should happen, guess what? The most influential thing that you can do is have results. And so Mitch knew this, and I'm going a ways back here, folks. I'm going all the way back to before we even had a 4 pillars type presentation, when we was still just doing a simple opportunity presentation of, hey, look, this is who we are, and here's cool stuff about real estate. We improved dramatically our system, but we didn't do it because Mitch had an idea. We did it because Mitch had results. And so when he was first proving that model, he was actually giving away cash, right? Pretend that looks like money. And he was doing it based on who had the most butts in seats. Whoever was just bringing the most people on a weekly basis when he was first proving this model. The other thing you can do is something similar to what Michael recently did, where he said, you know what? Anybody that makes $100,000 in this last quarter is going to go on this trip. Whoever makes, X amount of dollars, and I actually still have to go through and watch that video, so I know what he's put out there as far as these incentives are concerned. And sometimes, you have great luck with this, but what you'll find is oftentimes incentives for your team don't work unless they incentivize themselves. Unless they are willing to do the work regardless, many times these incentives prove to be less than effective. So a lot of times when we do it in a big group setting, they are more effective simply from the standpoint of positive peer pressure. When you get more people moving towards the same goal and talking about it, right, then oftentimes these incentives can become more effective in the way that they work. So let me do this. I'm going to clear all drawings. And now I'm going to talk about incentives. To close sales. This is something that, again, I could cover it in such a short amount of time, but there's ways to do incentives to close sales that can really catapult your business forward. And oftentimes, I don't even use them as much as I possibly could, because oftentimes it's not a whole lot. And typically, these are going to be non-monetary incentives. This is going to be something to help push your people over the edge when they are really close to making a decision. So usually this is going to be something that benefits them, right? So this could actually be your time. Right? Your time is valuable. And what you can offer to people is, listen, if you go ahead and get your order in, here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up a strategy session where we're going to go sit down. And I do this with, this is an incentive I use almost all the time, I say, hey, listen, we get your order in, and what we're going to do is I'm going to give you some of my time. Now, if you guys understand, when you really start running this business, your time becomes very, very valuable. I mean, I know that when, from a real estate perspective, my time is worth over $1,000 an hour, and in some cases, over $10,000 an hour. If you add up, the effort on the marketing side of the business, it's also over $1,000 an hour as well. So your time is very valuable as an entrepreneur. And so when you offer somebody some type of a strategy session, that's a big deal. Sometimes what you can do, and this actually goes back to team incentives as well, is you can offer your time to do phone calls with people, right? To do those types of things. So time is a huge incentive, and it's something that I use probably most often. But then there's other things. Oftentimes, you're going to have your prospects. You're going to have your potential students, your soon-to-be Renata's affiliates, right? You're going to have these people that they have certain roadblocks that are holding them back. And sometimes these roadblocks are, you know what? I just don't have the proper device to run this business. Like, I don't have a good computer. And sometimes it's as simple as saying, you know what? If you get started by such and such date, I will actually provide you with that computer that you need. For some people, it is, you know what? I don't have the proper clothes. Right? I don't have the right wardrobe for this whole thing. I kind of feel out of place. You can say, you know what? In order to help you engage with this community at a higher level, if you go ahead and get your combo order in by, the 28th, I'll actually take you suit shopping. We'll go out there and we'll do that. The list goes on and on, right? For some people, they are concerned about, you know what? It's about the money. If I spend that money right now, that's going to kind of max me out. And I don't know that I'm going to have money to put down as earnest money on a property, right? So the way that you find out about which of these is going to be their biggest issue is questions. Questions. As you're taking them through the process and as you're asking for the order, right, after, you're going to hear their objections coming up, their concerns, the things that are holding them back. And as they're going through these different objections, you want to hear what they're saying or what they're meaning rather than what they're saying. This is a skill that can prove most productive in your life, not just in this business, but in your life. Instead of listening to respond, listen to hear them. And not just hear what they say, but hear what they mean. Now, there are some specific ways that I feel like incentives are hugely beneficial and some things you want to do. The first thing is, when we talk about this time, you want to make sure there is a time frame. Meaning, if you put, let me get to the writing, if you put your order in with funding by a certain time, then I will give you, this incentive, whatever this incentive is. We're just going to put a box there. It could be anything, right? So they get to open their box and they get to get their incentive out of their box, right? So as long as you fund your order by a certain time, then I am going to provide you with such and such, whatever that may be, right? So I know I'm talking a little vague because there's so many different ways we can do this. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be specific, right? It doesn't even have to be specific. And it's about the conversation and how you have it. So let me just share with you a conversation that I had yesterday. I had a great conversation, and it led to me putting in an order last night at 11 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, right? Because I set the deadline of midnight, right? The deadline was midnight for him to put in his order in order to get his incentive. So if you guys have looked at the calendar, yesterday was the last day to enter orders in order for them to count for you in October. So just in case you're in your mind saying, man, I got to make my October good. I got to get some sales in. Guess what? October is over. October was over yesterday. Yesterday was the last day to enter orders and have them pay out in October. No big deal. You're now focused on November, right? If you hadn't entered the order, then you're focused on November. Now that means the order needs to be in and signed for. Signatures have to be, you have to have it signed for as of yesterday. So I'm working with an individual, and he's already really far along in the process, right? He knows this is what he wants to do. And he's also in the process of, him and his wife really want to buy a home. And so they're in the process of figuring out what they need to do to qualify for their home. Now, this guy, he makes a good six-figure income in sales. And, so it's not like he's scraping by. But at the same time, he's got a lot of confusion of, how am I going to qualify for this home? What should I report? I take a ton of write-offs, and I'm going to have to refile my taxes for last year and this year, and I just have to be strategic about this. And so we've been talking through this, and he was going to talk to his tax guy, and he was going to talk to his mortgage guy, and just figure out, what are the implications of him spending an extra $20,000 right now, and still being able to not only qualify for a house, but not take a huge tax hit. And as we were talking, he was kind of asking me some questions about, hey, did you take a huge tax hit? Because I found out yesterday, his tax guy told him you're going to look at paying about $40,000 to $60,000 in taxes if we report your report your taxes in the way that's going to show a high enough income for you to qualify for the house that you want. And obviously, that was not a very comfortable conversation. And I actually talked to him about how last year I qualified for a traditional mortgage using only bank statements and using business bank statements, which means I didn't have to change my lifestyle dramatically. I didn't have to go report all of my business income as personal income in order to qualify. I just paid a little bit higher interest rate. And to me, it's worth it, especially knowing what we know about how to pay down, debts and how to, do all those things. It was okay for me to pay 6.5% versus 4.5% in order to get the loan. And so you guys want to be thinking about this. You want to be knowledgeable about this stuff, because sometimes people's hang up is kind of irrelevant when they get in here and they become educated. Because he was thinking about it very traditionally about, if I get a mortgage, then I need to do this way and that way. And so when I shared with him about, this bank statement loan, basically, he started going and doing more research that way. And this was his biggest concern is, can he spend the $20,000 to get started in the education? Because he really wants to do this. He really wants to switch careers. Even though he's making good income where he's at, he wants to be doing something different. He's not fulfilled there. Right? He doesn't feel like the value is the same that it was when he first started with the company. His commitment to the company is waning. And so he wants to do something more for himself, which is, of course, Renatus and real estate. So I'm giving you the background and the backstory so that you understand the conversation that I had with him. And so I called him up yesterday, right? And his name's Alex. I'll just throw that out there. So I talked to Alex and I said, hey, Alex, I wanted to, and I actually had to leave him a message because he wasn't able to answer during the day. I said, Alex, I wanted to talk to you about something that could benefit you, but it's kind of time specific. So give me a call as soon as you get this. So he called me back later on. And he said, hey, man, I've been working all day. What's up? What's going on? And I said, well, tell me a little bit about your conversation with your tax and your mortgage guy, because that is going to kind of determine the conversation that I wanted to have with you, or that I want to have with you. And he went through and he kind of shared with me some of the stuff that he's been dealing with and some of what he's been going on. And I said, okay, great. Let me ask you a question. How likely is it that you will be getting started with your education by the end of the month? Because I have something that may benefit you, but it is very time specific. And so I don't want this to be the thing that makes you put it, that causes you to do this. I don't want you to spend $20,000 because I'm offering you this incentive, but it's just an added bonus because I believe that you're going to be doing this anyways. And so if you can do it in this time frame, I'm willing to offer you a little bit of incentive. Now, notice some of the language there, folks. I'm already saying, because I believe it's true, that he's going to be doing this anyways, and I want him to do this because it's the best thing for him. That's what I said to him. I want you to do this because this is the best thing for you. However, I happen to be in a position right now where it's looking like I'm going to break a personal record as far as monthly income for myself. Now, this is a conversation you can have with a guy like Alex, because Alex is a sales guy, right? So it's okay for me to talk about the benefits to me. I said, I'm on the verge of breaking a personal monthly income record. And if you put in your order, then that could definitely push me over the top. So here's what I'm willing to do. We would have to put in your order today, but if we put in your order today and signed for it, and you're able to fund that order by the 29th, which, by the way, guys, the 29th is the last day to fund the orders that you have in the system in order to have them pay out in October. You want to make sure you're always paying attention to those dates, right? I pay attention to them very clearly. And all of this is true, by the way. Like, I'm on the verge of breaking a personal record. I wanted to push that, even further. And so what I did was I said, Alex, here's what I'm willing to do for you. If you are willing to put in your order tonight, or actually, I think the way that I said it, because I didn't say if you are willing. What I said is, if we can put in your order tonight, right? Instead of like leaving it on him, I made it a joint effort. I said, if we can put in your order tonight and have it signed for, and you end up funding it by the 29th, what I'm willing to do is I'm willing to set aside $1,000 to help you in your business. So you can use that $1,000 however you want. I'm going to take that out of the commission that comes to me, because he knows all about the commissions. He knows that stuff. I'm going to take it out of the commission that comes to me, and I'm going to set it aside. And you can have access to that for whatever you want to build your business. So that means if you need it for earnest money on one of your first properties, guess what? I'll just put the earnest money down for you. If you need a new computer, I'll buy you that new computer. And so the only way this works, though, is if you put in your order tonight and if you fund it by the 29th. Now, here's the thing. If you're not able to get it funded by the 29th, I know you got a lot going on. No harm, no foul. We won't offer the incentive, but we'll just make sure we get that funded and get your order in whenever you're ready to get started. Is that something that you want to do? And so we talked through it a little bit, and he said, I have to talk with my wife. Now, his wife's all on board on this thing. She wants to be doing it with him. They are going to be a power couple in this business. And so he said, I have to talk with Ashley. But I believe that I would like to see myself get started by the end of the month anyway. So let me talk with her first. And when is the latest that I can call you back? And I said, well, it's got to be in tonight. I'll probably be up till, 9 or 10, 11 at the latest. So sure enough, 10 o'clock, I get a text message. And he says, I still need a little more time to find the funding, but I would like to say that I will be starting in real estate by the end of the month. And I just text back to him and said, so do you want to put in your order now just in case? And he said, yes, absolutely. So what I did is I sent him off his link, and I said, I can call and walk you through it, and we'll get your order in. And he started texting me back and just said, oh, which buttons do I click? What do I put in as far as the payment info? And he actually just entered his order last night. Full combo order, by the way. And he's stoked. Afterwards, the conversation was more about congratulations, right? Almost every order that I've ever put in or every sale I've made, they have thanked me. Think about that. They have thanked me for the opportunity, and last night was no different. When somebody puts in their order, I'm not saying thank you so much for putting in your order, right? I'm saying congratulations, because they're taking on this new step. Trust me when I tell you that your new students get so much more value than you receive with your $10,000 commission. And so he was thanking me for the opportunity to put in his order, and he's excited to get it funded by the end of the month. And it was because I used an incentive. And it's not even a specific incentive, as you guys heard. I couldn't really tell what was going to be best for him. But I knew that if he was going to do this already, he might just need that extra little push. So for me, I'm willing to take 10% of my commission, essentially, and give it back to him in something that will build his business. Because guess what? Now I get to use that incentive moving forward and say, hey, listen, we got this $1,000. Have you been watching your education? Have you been putting in orders, right? If he starts showing some major interest on the marketing side of the business, I can say, hey, by the way, we got this $1,000 that I gave to you as an incentive because you got your order in that time frame. What if we put that towards some lead generation for you, right? So there's lots of different incentives that you can use, and you don't even have to be specific necessarily, but you want to use them in your favor. Always put a time frame in front of it, though. So sometimes I'll give that time frame of, hey, listen, if you get your order in the next week or the next month or whatever it is. Sometimes it's very time specific, like last night. I knew yesterday was the last day to get those orders in. And I said, Alex, we got to get your order in tonight, and it's got to fund by the 29th. Is that something that you would want to do? And sure enough, he did it. So I hope this is beneficial for you guys in the different ways that you can use incentives. I know I've gone a little bit over my usual time frame. I try to end this by 8:40 so I can be prepared for the pit team call. But let me go ahead and see if we've got any chat message questions here. Thank you, Christian. Yes, very beneficial. By the way, guys, if you're using these incentives, you want to make sure you're qualified, right? And when I say qualified, I mean if you're going to give money from the commission that's coming in, but you still need to pass a couple of sales to your 5-star, you can't exactly offer that unless you're willing to come out of pocket, right? You cannot offer your 5 stars money for them unless you've already had that conversation and unless they've said, hey, I'm willing to do this and this. So just keep that in mind. Get qualified, buy 1, sell 2, you're done, and you can offer any type of incentives that you feel fitting. All right, folks, it is Think Rich Thursday. Go out there and make it happen.